So when I was in 8th grade, I remember my history teacher at the time divided up the class into two massive groups. One side was going to argue for the American Revolution. They were going to be pro-American Revolution. And the other side was going to be the Brits and why America shouldn't be free. And I always thought about that. I thought that was a great way to kind of learn historical aspects of, force you to think in a different perspective. I want to do that here as well because I think it can be beneficial for pretty much everyone here. I realize that sometimes it's hard to, it's very important to put yourself in the perspective of another person, and you can really learn a lot, even if that's not the side that you support. You can learn a ton about this, about another country in this instance, or another person like Putin and the way they're thinking. So I wanted to argue what are some of the things in the peace deal that I would want if I was Russian. Obviously, I'm not Russian. I'm an American, and I'm an American from California. But if I'm Putin and I'm Russian, that these are the things I'm thinking about. Because sometimes I see on the internet, because this is a big topic right now, because a peace deal is we're trying to find a way to a peace deal. I'm seeing a lot of things that people, like a lot of comments and tweets and Reddit comments, and I'm just like, okay, there's just no way Russia's going to accept that. Like, do you have any, you know what I mean? Like, are you thinking at all about some of the stuff? Of course, this is partly part of the media's problem. The media is not going to inform people some of these perspectives. But anyways, I have a list of demands that if I'm Putin, if I'm Russia, these are the things that I want. This is currently the most updated peace plan. Who knows if this is what's going to actually go through, but I've been seeing a couple of these ideas be thrown around for a couple of months now. We'll see how much of it actually goes into play. I'm taking, some of this stuff obviously into consideration. Before we get this started, as Russia, as Putin, this is how I'm feeling, or at least the Russian government, not Russian people, but this is how I'm feeling. I feel pretty mixed about the war, honestly. I would feel very mixed. Yes, we got a bunch of new territory. Yes, we, connected our land to our new land in Crimea. Obviously we took the Crimean Peninsula away. Overall, on the map, does it look like we won this war, or that we're winning, or whatever? It might not have been a decisive victory, but it obviously looks like we have won here. However, that's just on the surface. That's when you literally look at the map and you see, okay, Ukraine lost land versus me as a Russian won land. Again, hypothetically speaking. But there's a whole lot of other factors that go into it than just that. First of all, what are some of the other consequences? What were some of the fallout, basically, to, the 3-day military operation? Two big ones is that Finland and Sweden just joined NATO. We kind of got into this whole thing because of NATO and NATO expansion, and that was definitely an element to all of this. And unfortunately, the action in Ukraine caused more people to join NATO. That was definitely not what we wanted to do. Finland being the big one, especially because Finland was neutral and independent, and the Finlandization, they talk about that word a lot during the entire Cold War. Well, now we forced Finland to choose a side. That's not good. But also, don't forget Sweden too. I know that, we like to meme on Sweden and, all the things about Sweden, but remember that Sweden is a big player, obviously, in the Baltic Sea, and we need the Baltic Sea to get from Russian mainland to our Russian enclave, Kaliningrad. So that's just another country in the Baltic Sea that we now have to worry about. So that's something that's really not good. I don't like that. We now kind of have been forced to get closer with China, and I know on the surface that might seem like a good thing, and it kind of is in certain aspects, but remember that as Russia, I'm extremely worried about how much bigger, how much more powerful China is over me. I can very much become the lesser partner in an alliance between the two. That is my fear. That's why I don't want to get too close to China as Russia, because I might accidentally find myself basically becoming the Canada to the USA. That's not, that metaphor doesn't work exactly, but, Canada's a lot bigger. Canada's bigger than the USA. Obviously, Russia has a much bigger military, much more powerful military than Canada, but it might end up being like I become the Canada of China's USA, if that makes any sense. So yes, it did push me closer to China, but that also kind of worries me a bit. Some pros, I guess, is that I do have a much more my whole economy is much more involved in the military, and I've industrialized my economy to be, the war machine has started to go, if that makes any sense. We have definitely ramped up the war machine. We can continue to fight this. That's the way I'm thinking. We can probably continue to fight this. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, those Russian demographics, which were already really bad, are looking worse and worse and worse every single day because we're losing so many people in the meat grinder that has become this Ukrainian front. However, we have waned ourselves off of the Western world. We've kind of focused on trading our resources with China and India and any other players that kind of want to do business with us. So we've caused kind of a schism there in the world with players that are pro me as Russia and then not that, Ukraine and the West and things like that. Finally, one more aspect. As Russia, I would not mind for there to be a peace deal and I start selling resources, gas, and other things back to Europe. Why would I not? That sounds like a great idea, because if I can somehow not be punished for all the things, for the 3-day military operation, the offensive war that just took place, and all the things, like, hell yeah, I'm going to do that. Actually, in fact, if I'm Putin, I'm going to try to look as nice and good to the Europeans as possible so I can go back to selling them all their stuff. I want some money again. I mean, of course, I'm a businessman doing business, so I'm going to make myself try my best to cuddle up to the Europeans and see if Germany wants to continue to buy that cheap oil and gas and all that stuff, all of our energy resources. So that's what I would like to do. If I can get out scot-free without, continuing to be punished economically, I know that, obviously we're making do with the economic situation that we are, but if I can make it better, I'd like to take all this land and then get money from Europe again. Obviously, I'm in Europe as Russia, but the other Europeans. Okay, so with all that said, peace deal time. This is some of the things that I would be negotiating if I'm Russia. First of all, freeze the borders right here. We got to freeze the borders. I'm not even going to, will I take more? Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. There's no way that they're going to give me more than the front lines right here. So freeze the borders. I'm sure some people on the opposite side during the peace treaty talks, which apparently we're doing this in Saudi Arabia. I'm not exactly sure if that's still going to go through or not, but there might be some negotiation to get me out of certain regions, so I only take 2, but 2 of the oblasts. But I pretty much want all these. This is where I'm at. This is what I control. I want all these. On top of that, we got to get whoever's in Kursk out of there. We have some Ukrainians in our Russian land somewhere up there. So maybe I shouldn't say freeze the border. Freeze the border of land that I control. We're going to have to do some negotiation tactics, I guess. I mean, obviously it's a peace treaty, so we got to get some things. We're going to have to give up some things. But we got to get, obviously, that's not even a question, to get Ukraine out of Kursk. Here's the big one that I really wanted to mention, though, because I feel like a lot of people, this is going right over everyone, not everyone, but some normies on the internet and their minds, going right over their head. Ukraine can never be a part of NATO. If I am Russia, I am never, ever going to, I don't know, I don't care what they give up. I got to be honest, there's no fucking way I'm letting Ukraine in NATO. There's just no way. That's like the one line that I draw as Russia, as Putin. And I think that a lot of people were just like, oh, it's fine. Like, peace out, let Ukraine in NATO. No. Like, the conversation halts there. There's no way they can allow that. Russia will never let Ukraine in NATO. Russia will never let Ukraine in the EU or the Schengen zone or the Eurozone or any of that stuff. No, it must always remain a neutral state, because I see Ukraine as in my sphere of influence. There are people, basically the former Soviet, land. That is all my sphere of influence. Everyone else, you stay the frick out. I've already lost stuff. If I'm looking at my sphere of influence as basically being old Soviet lands, well, I've lost the Baltic territories, and I've lost certain other regional members in the Caucasus, like, certain people that allied to the West over me. So I'm already, playing from a down hand here. There's no way I lose Ukraine. That's never going to happen. Absolutely. The next thing that I would like personally is I want elections in Ukraine, and I want elections in Ukraine like immediately. I mean, obviously there is probably going to be elections in Ukraine if there's a peace deal, no matter what. But I want elections in Ukraine, and I want to make sure that those things, I mean, I don't know how exactly we do this, but I'm going to want to make sure that there's not insane. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I want to make sure that I have a chance to maybe get a pro-Russian Ukrainian leader in that spot somehow. Maybe not pro-Russian, but definitely less Western and more of a neutral force. Bare minimum, I want to. If I can get someone that's obviously a pro-Russian in Ukraine, then that's ideal, but that's probably very unlikely. That's probably not on the list of things that the U.S. will ever let happen. I'm sure, man, those Ukrainian elections are going to be insane because it's going to be like two massive forces meddling in both sides. I mean, I guess that's how elections go, right? But those particularly would be bad. In terms of like the rare earth minerals, like the U.S. rare earth minerals, the U.S. wants certain rare earth minerals from Ukraine. I mean, I don't know if I know enough about that specifically. I mean, even if I'm Putin, what other information does he have? He probably has more information, obviously, than I do. But I mean, like, what we do with those earth minerals, I mean, do I want the U.S. to have it? But no. But is that something that I'm willing to give up? Well, yeah, like get them out of Kursk and I'll give you certain earth minerals, you know what I mean? We don't want to just give them everything that they want. You know, maybe we can meet in the middle, maybe we can do something, but that could be a negotiation tactic. Don't give them everything. I mean, that's rule number one when it comes to making a deal is go in saying you want more than what you'll actually take and expect that the other person is doing that same thing. So if they're asking for this number of earth minerals, well, let's get that down to half. You know what I mean? Let's get that down to half. Absolutely. So the mineral thing, fine. The border operation, they're talking about a demilitarized zone. I guess think the Korean Peninsula. As long as, I mean, I've said this as Russia. They don't want NATO members in Ukraine whatsoever. I mean, NATO in Ukraine being in NATO is one thing. I won't accept that at all. You can't even have NATO members. You can't have British troops, German troops. All of them have to stay the hell away from Ukrainian territory. So having a demilitarized zone where NATO members patrol it, absolutely not. There's just no way I would accept that. Again, unless you, I don't know, maybe pay me $1 trillion, okay? I guess. But even in that sense, I don't know. Now that, you know, Russia's getting closer and closer to having their warm sea port, which is what they've always wanted historically, and now they want a port that is out of the freezing cold, then maybe I'm getting some things that I've wanted historically, but, you know, I kind of want more now. I just wanted to make sure I made a mention of that's a big thing that Russia's always wanted because they have, everything's cold up there, and it's hard to have a warm water port with the land that they control, but it's getting a little bit closer. Something to keep in mind is I still don't really have that without safe passage through the Mediterranean or the Baltic Sea. I still don't really have that. I mean, maybe negotiation can be had with China to fix that. But anyways, back to the demilitarized zone. Yeah, I guess that's fine if just Ukraine is patrolling that. I mean, that sounds good because if I ever want to re-invade Ukraine in the future, then yeah, it's just Ukraine that I'd be fighting again. But, and that's something that I'm keeping in the back of my mind. That's why I do not want NATO troops inside of Ukraine, no ifs, ands, or buts, because if I ever want to go after Ukraine again, because I did it in 2014, taking Crimea, so it's possible that I could just go again. I mean, the Russian war economy is already mobilizing. It's already going at full strength. So maybe we take like a peace treaty. That's a whole other thing is like guaranteeing peace. Can they really guarantee peace for 10 years? I don't think they can. But I would definitely like the opportunity to go to war again, maybe in 3 years. Maybe we'll go after it because, I mean, we've definitely done a pretty big number on Ukraine. Something I am keeping in the back of my mind, though, is that Ukraine is basically going to be a de facto U.S. client state at this point. Ukraine owes so much money to the USA. I'm very worried that this is essentially an American puppet now right on my borders. Even if they aren't in NATO, I'd be very worried at how much the U.S. now has bought and just straight up owns Ukraine. Maybe we can get some elections in there and kick them out, kick the Americans out with a more neutral Ukrainian leader. But that's, these are all things that I'm keeping in the back of my mind. I do not want Ukraine to essentially be a de facto European or U.S. client state. I don't know how much I can really control about that, but we can kind of try our best. But we'll see. Anyways, those are just a couple of things that I'm thinking about because I'm just seeing a lot of people say some things that are absolutely outlandish. But fun little thought experiment. Let me know if there's anything that I forgot as from the Russian perspective. But these are just some things I jotted down real quick.